Why don't you? It's interesting that you're a graduate of College of Marin, but you're also a neighbor to everybody in this room. So talk to us about who you are as a person and who you are as a neighbor here in Marin.
Yeah, I grew up in Point Reyes when it was truly a rough and tumble world out there. I tell when people ask what it was like, it was ranch owners, ranch workers, and a third other, and I was in the third other bucket. My dad's from England, my mom's from China, and when I was growing up out there, I didn't realize how special it was, and I had to leave. I enlisted in the military after high school. I was a mediocre student, did well in tests, and so it's also like College of Marin was very good for me because it gave me a sort of a second chance in the system once I grew up a little bit. But it was a cool upbringing, and you really learn independence. And now I think it's one of the coolest places on earth, and I'm hoping we can keep it somewhat insulated from all the wealthy tech people coming up here. So I'm straddling worlds a little bit these days.
So, you got kids?
2 kids, 2 daughters, 8 and 11.
8 and 11. So you're a busy guy. So you grew up here in West Marin. You know, when I grew up, my dad was a police officer, so I was supposed to be a police officer. And I remember 6 months before going in the academy, I looked at him and said, "Nah, it's not going to be a good idea." And then just my journey to get to here has been an interesting one. So you grew up wanting to be a technology founder, and everything worked out perfectly on your journey to get to here. It was all planned?
Not at all, actually. I was always a hustler. I think no one's surprised I got into entrepreneurship. Like, since I was a little kid, I was always just like selling random stuff and sold Beanie Babies on AOL classifieds in bulk and laser pointers at school that so many that got banned, and I lost my money because they wouldn't let me sell them anymore. So in some ways I do have the gene, and I'm stubborn and persistent and annoying and challenge systems for whatever reason, just comes out naturally. But are
we related? Are we related somehow?
Maybe, I don't know. But I actually did not want to be an entrepreneur because my dad was sort of in startups, never really worked out. My mom was a school teacher, she's a special ed teacher, mainly in Marin City. And we struggled with money in high school. Not like a lot. We were always fine, but it kind of went from family just wasn't a thing we thought about until seeing my parents have to watch the pennies a little bit. And I really just didn't want to be broke. And so I almost became an investment banker. I have a whole health scare that worked out fine that ended up giving me some downtime to work on the business. So it was almost like, if you believe in fate, you could almost make a fate story out of it. But I think I got lucky that I naturally sort of just fell into something that I was suited for. But after high school, I was in the military, as I briefly mentioned. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was too young to apply to the academy. I wouldn't have gotten anyway, so I just enlisted, and that was 2000. And then 9/11 happened, and got sent to the Middle East and all that. And it was very clear I was not a military guy. And then got out. I did a year of college at Arkansas State on a Air Force base, and then did 3 semesters at College of Marin before transferring to Cal. And I remember being, not in this building, so this looks newer, but there was I think the last time I was here was when I was a student here 20-something years ago.
Quite the journey. Real quick, for those in the room, Life 360, how many of you use the app? That's pretty good group. So tell us about Life 360. And, you know, I'm sure almost 20 years ago, it looks a little different from today. So what was the concept behind Life 360? What is it, and how has it changed over the past almost 20 years?
So it's really only changed once. Our first idea was very different, and it was a school project for Berkeley entrepreneurship class. It was actually like the worst class I took at Cal. It was a terrible, terrible professor. And sorry, the professor's okay, but the content was it was not helpful. It was like LLC, S Corp, C Corp. Here's how you choose, which is like the last thing a founder should worry about at all, which is maybe the not sarcastic version of me telling Brune to get sued. It's like what really matters, like build stuff that people want. That's why you're going to fail, not these legal technicalities. But the idea was a system, it's pre-smartphone. How do you help families reconnect after big emergencies? It was inspired by Hurricane Katrina, and it just seemed like, hey, there's something there. After that disaster, phone lines went down, but SMS was still up. So it was the idea of like a multi-channel messaging system to help families reconnect. Wasn't planning to do anything with it. Dementia had a health scare, which worked out fine. And I had this downtime, like, let me try this. Might as well try this idea that I had. And iPhone had just come out. There were no third-party apps. Android was just announced, and Google was putting this prize together for like the best Android apps. But there was no phone. It was like literally on an emulator screen, and they were going to be the first platform that you could access the GPS. So we built a prototype and won the first phase of the competition, which got us $25,000. And around that, like, there's something bigger here, and Facebook is getting big with friends. LinkedIn was getting huge with professionals, and we like, what? The family will be moving digital as well. And that was a bit of a cliche pitch, like dozens, if not hundreds, of family social networks. But our idea is like, if you're going to win families, don't look like everything else out there. And so our take was, everyone will eventually have a smartphone, and what if it's more utility and location oriented? And when we called the company Life 360, because the vision was, how do we be that network for families across all life stages, from little kids to aging parents? So we really only had that one pivot in our first year of existence pre-launch, and then we were just lockjaw that like, this is going to happen. It just seemed so obvious people would get over the creepiness of location, because like you could just see how useful and sticky and powerful it was. And for 7 years, there really wasn't that much traction, but when it hit, it just started growing and growing and growing. And but we held firm after that one shift. So it actually hasn't changed a lot, but a lot of the tech is coming to fruition. Our vision was people, pets, things, everything in one place, and now we have hardware devices. We're adding pets and thinking about elder care next year. So it's just been laser focused and been good to see happen. And I always wonder, how much was it luck or skill, or I'm sure it's mainly luck, but we did have to be persistent.
You out of curiosity, you keep on saying we. So who was we at the very beginning?
The very, very beginning, it was just me. But then I did get a co-founder, and there's another one that didn't work out as well. So there's all companies a little bit of messy history there. So we sort of rewrote history to make it sound like me and my co-founder from day one. But it took me a bit to really lock in that early team. But now my co-founder's like best friend and partner, and I'm on the board of his company, which is launching satellites into space. And it's been a really good both personal and professional relationship. Very
cool. So a couple of weeks ago, I admit I was a little jealous because you stepped down as CEO in 2025. And so I think I said, so when you retired, and you said, well, I haven't retired, right? You transitioned into something else. But Life 360 has grown to 90 million users and has 500 employees from that very beginning stage when it was just you. So your role's much different today. Talk a little bit about your role and what that transition looks like. And there's a lot of people here in the very beginning stages that, still have one person, which is them, or a couple employees. Talk to them about that uncertain journey, getting from the 2 people to 500 employees, 90 million users. Talk about that journey.
Well, in the early days, just build something that people want, and I think it's like such a cliche thing people say, but I think the people that do well, they're just obsessive around what they're putting together. They focus on what matters most. And so for us, I didn't know what I was doing at all, and the infrastructure and ecosystem is so much more built out than it was. Like I did not have good mentors or advisors in terms of how to build a technology product. I wish I did, and that's why I think with incubators like Y Combinator, especially the good ones, they really are so helpful because they can tell you what to do. So I in the early days, I wasted a ton of time, but I was able to learn quickly. I think that does probably separate out many entrepreneurs, those who make it and don't. Like, don't be rigid, figure out what's working. And if your pace of being able to adapt and learn is quick enough, it's okay if you don't know what you're doing. But the early days was scrounging around for money, building stuff, trying to recruit people. I was mediocre at hiring people in the early days. It's still not my strongest suit. So in some ways, the reason I'm kind of bouncing around to this is like I don't think my arc was necessarily what I'd advise people to do. And most of my advice would be the cliche stuff about team set in the first 90 days, make sure that's locked in, focus on your customer, but really do it and just be lockjaw about it. And I think sometimes I wonder, like, why come here and listen to talks like this? Because you can read it all online. And I think if I were to communicate something, it's like, I think if you see someone in a room saying emphatically, like, seriously, focus on customers, work hard, be creative, learn, like all the stuff you can read in any blog post, but like, look something that, seriously, it really is all there is to it. Don't get distracted by the noise. Don't wait for permission to do what you're told. And so we got there, then we raised money, got bigger. I can talk about there's all sorts of different things you have to do as a company grows and scales, and when do you worry about culture and not, and the sort of Goldilocks on process, too little, too much. And I think for the entrepreneurs that are starters but not finishers, it's they can't shift out of that gear. I think some of what I was good at was having to load balance between a team of hiring really young people or startup people when you say, hey, you need a little bit more structure and process and overhead, and then also hiring the proverbial gray hair, which now I'm 42, which I'm not old in the valley, you're not young anymore. Like, hey, you guys are going way too far here, and I think I somehow was able to do a decent job balancing that. The pendulum's always swinging, but that was just a huge portion of my job, like telling people are operating kind of too rigidly, telling people like, hey, you got to pay the taxes, we're a little bit bigger now, and then eventually get bigger and bigger. And then one thing, when we went public, that was great and fun, and it was a cool capstone, but then the amount of time you're doing managing external parties, that's probably the most miserable piece of my job. I don't know, I'm not sure why that got a giggle, but it genuinely was. And it was actually easy, just draining. And I don't really prepare for anything. And it's probably been one of my skills. Like with earnings, I got to the point I wouldn't even do a single prep, but it would just wear me out. So I think there's something around what gives you energy. And I'm kind of veering off the question you asked. And then what are you good at and what gives you energy? And it's great when they line up. They don't always line up. And so I think running a company, some people love it the whole way through, but for at least half of my time as CEO was sort of grinning and bearing it. And I was actually good at things I didn't like, which was a double-edged sword. And so that was part of the reason to transition, all the cliches of kids getting older and being worn out and knowing when you have enough. It was kind of hard to walk away, and I sometimes feel like, man, I really knew how to run the company well, and it's tough to see someone else doing it. And so with my role now, I run the board. I both mentor and kind of work with the CEO and provide some both sparring partner, guardrail support to her. And then more recently jumped in on some of the new AI features that we're working on because I see the sea change coming. And I very, very cliche too, speaking of cliches, like, man, I don't think a lot of people know what's coming. And I can see it. And once you've seen it, it's really hard to unsee. So I think there's going to be massive opportunity and disruption happening that's bigger than mobile. And I realize I sound like one of the tech guy talking heads, but I think it's the truth. So I'm hoping to help the company navigate that.
So that transition, whether you like being CEO or not, that was your baby, you created it, you transitioned to somebody else. Difficult, and what you're doing today, is that what charges you? Are you enjoying this, or is it? I mean, it's got to have some difficulties.
Yeah, it's honestly been hard. It is hard. I can see where she's better than me. I can see where I was better, and I think it's not a fair standard to say someone has to do everything better than you, because that's just impossible. So, but still, like, all right, it's you have someone who clearly we promoted from within, so I already knew what I was getting, and someone's just such an amazing operator, and realizing that someone does have to put their stamp on things, and you see how it goes. And where I felt I could add most value was in terms of being a little bit disruptive, seeing the company maybe get a little bit too rigid, and now I'm managing a team of 6 people and building things completely orthogonal to the mothership, and I'm hoping we can lead a little bit by example, like within this really small group. What is it? can we show not tell around to a now it's up like 800 people. Like how can we operate in this new environment, which is just so different?
So the theme today is build what lasts. I'm a big person on building sustainability and thinking longer term, and sometimes you've got to make decisions that sacrifice short term versus long term. Can you think of, did that happen, or this has all happened by accident? Can you think of those times where, because you're almost 20-year company, highly successful, so sustainability, not all companies, even successful ones, don't last that long. So what were those moments where you purposely made some decisions that you think led you to where you're at today in this company that is doing really, really well?
The long-term piece was actually somewhat easy for me, more by necessity. And when we thought about, I'm a very paranoid person. I'm more downside focused than more entrepreneurs for whatever reason. Genuinely, I'm always, what can go wrong, what can kill us. So one of our early beliefs was that everything we do is a commodity, and location, which is our core, was new back then. Like, someone's gonna give it away for free. Someone's gonna do it better. Funny anecdote, speaking of big things, our main competitor is a company called Looped, run by Sam Altman, and so he was our fight. He was charging for his product, and we got these well-funded people. The carriers were competing with us. Like, how do we build something durable? And we said we're gonna go freemium, so give the core product away for free, upsell down the road, which is a much harder business. It's not normal at all with the utility or security product, and that was sort of bucking the business advice. But it was that paranoid nature that our product is something that you will not be able to charge for at its core. It's going to take a lot longer to build that base, but if we can build a base where we have a huge platform of users, basically user acquisition machine that takes care of itself at that point, if we can get that scale, then we have a huge long-term sustained edge. And that's what made it hard in the early days, because we just had to burn a bunch of cash to do that, because we did not charge anything for many, many years. But it was always that long-term mindset. And it is something, candidly, as I'm out, I see that shifting, and I notice it's tough. If you get bigger and you have people evaluate on their P&L, they're not zooming out. I notice one thing that execs do, even good ones, they go walk around the room, they talk about the thing, and then they don't do anything, but then nobody talked about it. And F off, guys. Like, seriously, make the tough decisions. I give you zero credit for talking about it, because it's so easy.
We are related.
It's so easy to rationalize. And so it's, for us, we could double our revenue tomorrow by raising prices, by moving our paywalls. The market would love it. Sometimes when I'm cynical about truly wanting to get out, is like, okay, like, because I still have most of my money in the company, like, all right, let's let the corporate antibodies take over, move our paywalls, charge, have 2 years of, like, let's PE ourselves. I'll have gazillions more dollars and screw it. But that's just, I think a lot of people do that. So for me, it started as this paranoia, like, let's disrupt ourselves so no one else can disrupt us. And I think it's something innate. I think long term in general. So I don't know if you can train that, but it's just, you need to be ready to just don't look a year out, don't look 2 years out. Like, think first principles, like what is going to be durable for you. That's not always the right move, because you can be purist too far the other way. But that's probably, I'd say, for our situation. And being public's a whole other story. We can talk about that if you like, but that's how I think about it.
Let's talk about going public. So you went public, IPO'd in 2024. I think most people in this room think you've arrived. You're at the top of the mountain. It brings other issues. Did you feel like you arrived, or it was not what you expected? Talk about that. that journey?
Well, we had a very circuitous path in general, even being a public company. So we actually listed in Australia at first in 2019, and then moved to the NASDAQ in 2024, which was weird. So we've had 6 years being public. Actually 7 now. So because we did this sort of baby IPO at first, I don't think necessarily feel like we arrived. For me, it was practical, going back to like not being poor. I'm not sure how technical people are with finance terms here, but when we were private, we had a bit preference stack, which is basically oversimplified, all the money you have to pay investors off before you get a dollar. And when you go public, you get rid of that and solve it. So when we did this Australia IPO, I didn't feel like I had arrived, but it was the first time I had like some real money. I had the house free and clear before that, but that's when I felt like, okay, I can take a breather, and then we no longer had this big chunk of investor dollars ahead of us. And then it does change how a company operates. I always felt a little bit weird that we had this like ASX thing. It was like fake public company. It wasn't. It was like, it was some ways more overhead overseas. But there was something we wanted to finish, and so we moved to the NASDAQ. In some ways, I felt like I'd completed that journey. We were able to take another slug off, and everyone made tons of money who invested. And I went to all our investors, sure, with the first listing we did, like, please sell your principal plus $1 so I don't have to feel like I have to worry about losing your money. And I know investors don't think that way, but for me, I just felt like I could not lose anyone's money. And so I had some moral absolution once we went public that anyone wanted to sell, they could do it. And then we listed on the NASDAQ. It was something like, okay, I've done the whole cycle, could keep going. Didn't really feel like I had arrived necessarily. I don't celebrate things, and I'm trying to get better at that. I didn't go to my high school or college graduation, for what it's worth.
We are related. Yeah. Oh my God.
But I tried to look at that, and I tried to appreciate what we had done. Used a moment to reflect on the journey, giving back a little bit. Started a nonprofit around that same time, and started thinking about next chapters. And usually, when people step down, they talk about wanting to spend more time with their families. It's always unclear if that meant someone got fired or not. In my case, I didn't get fired, and I did want to spend more time with my family. And so, yeah, I think finishing that cycle was part of that.
All right. So we're about out of time, but you mentioned the nonprofit, Point Reyes Good Luck Fund, pretty cool. Preserve the character, heritage, and community assets of West Marin. So tell the group real quick, high level, what it is and what your goal is.
Sure. So we started a $15 million fund to basically, it started with Point Reyes, but actually possibly getting bigger, preserve it for locals. We are changing quite a bit, and I think the smaller parts of Marin are quite special. I'm talking my childhood and all that. How do we preserve that? And as things change, we are seeing some communities where it is sort of the wealthy second homeowners and everyone serving them and kind of gutting the community. So we, starting with Point Reyes, just trying to keep it a town for locals, and a phenomenon is happening. Either buildings being boarded up or really gentrifying. Economics are really, really tough. So we're trying to buy buildings and preserve businesses. We have 4 buildings in Point Reyes right now, more in the works, but we have the Old Western Saloon, which was the first one. I'm personally running the bar there, so come on out for a drink. We have the pharmacy in town. We partner with Petaluma Health to preserve that. We don't own the building, but we have a right of first refusal to preserve that entire block for perpetuity. There's the building where the former station house was, and we have a new place opening up there. And then we have Vladimir's in Inverness. And so there are these towns which were kind of getting empty. And the basic idea is use nonprofit money to stabilize them, have them forever preserved, deed restricted, all that. It's a public charity, so it'll outlast me. And then we do have a bit of a for-profit eye in the way we run things, where we are going to spin ownership back to the community. So once we have these buildings stabilized, use nonprofit dollars to kind of do economically unviable things to preserve them, get good tenants in, anyone will be able to invest in their town and actually have real cash flow in return, and the nonprofit will still steward them, because we don't need to own it as long as we've preserved it. And hopefully we can provide a model where people already can donate to the nonprofits, but what if you have your treasury dollars or something kind of boring, your munis, just invest in your hometown, and we think we can provide really good returns for you. And so that's actually been really exciting and maybe getting bigger because we're getting people from other communities wanting for us to buy their buildings as well, and we're getting some interest from Truly Well. I'm done very well, but there's a whole another level of money out here. Some people are taking interest in what we're doing. So our hope is that we can take a nonprofit stewardship model with a kind of for-profit way of doing things and have a mechanism to preserve our small towns.
Awesome. Congratulations. A local success story, and way to give back to your community after you reach that mountaintop.
Thank you for having me.